But right now we want to switch it up. We want to change gears, and we're going to go right into our lineup that we have prepared for you guys tonight. We have a special segment that's going to be performed tonight by Isaiah Mena will be first, Vero will go second, and then lastly, but not least, Andrew and Yesenia will finish it off. Amen. And we love this segment. It's powerful. It's touched many lives, and we love to do it, and we're the gang. Amen. So we're gonna start our segment here tonight, and our segment is called "This Is My Story." Amen.
Amen. First off, I want to start off by saying my name is Isaiah Mena. I'm 20 years old. And, I just want to thank God for saving my life. I've been through, a crazy experience. I went through a whole lot when I was in the world. And before I start off by telling my story, I just want to say that, it was at a young age where I started getting a hold of, started doing graffiti. I was hanging around gang members and all that. And then I started doing drugs at a very young age. And I started drinking at a very young age. I started hanging out in that lifestyle at a very young age. And then, I remember just being in elementary and just being the only kid, just wearing baggy clothes, wearing socks all the way up to my knees, and then just growing up, just living that lifestyle, watching all my older homies, telling me, trying to pull me into the wrong direction and all that. I remember going to middle school, just living that whole lifestyle. I remember getting caught up and getting into shootouts, watching homies get stabbed, watching homies go in the hospital, homies get locked up. And I experienced all this in middle school, but at 7th grade, I started seeing way worse things. That's when I first seen one of my first homies die. And then, things started getting out of control from there. I remember people telling me, my older homies telling me, if you're gonna live this life, you better live it fully. There's no half in, half out, and I remember taking that and running with it. So, I know everyone, when you hold that gun, everyone seems to say oh, you're the homie that holds the gun, you're the one that's gonna get in trouble. But no, I wanted to hold the gun. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to, when you talked about my crew, I wanted you to mention me. I didn't want you to mention me for graffiti. Oh, he gets up. No, I wanted you to mention me for being dangerous. I just remember having that mentality, not caring, I started losing sense of emotions, I just wanted to be a dangerous dude. I don't know, that was just my mindset. And, in this first picture right here, I remember this day, I was actually a junior in high school. And I was just, hanging out with all my homies. I just got back from hanging out with my family. I just went over there and they invited me. And this is actually the night where I experienced something and we got involved into something that we didn't know we were getting into. This was actually the night that me and my homies decided to stop tagging. We didn't want to be known as a crew no more. We were getting involved in too much gang violence. Homies were getting locked up. Homies were getting shot at, stabbed. And we had enough. We were tired of being a crew. And as you can see, I have older homies in there, and they're 30. And then I remember them saying, we're getting older, and we don't want to be involved in this. We don't want to be getting caught up for the young kids, mistakes and all that. We're getting older. If we're gonna still be involved in this, then we're gonna come a hood. I just remember them saying that. I was the first one to jump up from my age, saying, "I'm down with it. Let's run with it." And then, so this night, I remember after all this, we ended up going somewhere. We ended up going to I think it was Montebello. That's where we started from. I remember just cruising the streets in the car. And this is one of the first times that I experienced a bullet really coming at me. We're in the car and the song came on, and this is my song, so I was just really listening to it, but for some reason I didn't want to listen to it. So I reached to go turn it and just turn it off. I just really wanted to smoke and just hang out with the homies and talk. I remember reaching for it and a bullet just came past my head. You know, that night was a crazy experience. I remember driving off. The homies' tires were like popped, and we just kept driving. The windows were getting shot at. I remember seeing so much at that, just as a junior, you know, in high school. You know, that's where it came to my mindset. Was like, you know what? I'm willing to die for these 3 letters. I'm willing to die for them. You know, not knowing what I was really getting myself involved into, not really knowing so much. You know, just going fully in it. I just remember those same words. If you're gonna be in it, you're gonna be in it. You know, half stepping in, half stepping out. And then, you know, I remember the next day after this, you know, I got a call from one of my homies saying that that one of the younger homies, he ended up in the hospital. You know, we thought everyone was fine, but, you know, he was shot. He was shot in his chest. And I just remember seeing, like, dang, like, I remember seeing myself, like, dang, that could have been me. I was the one that reached for the radio. What if I didn't reach for it? I could have been dead. I wouldn't be here. You know, and, you know, I just remember going to, onto my senior year, I just remember going to Sierra Vista. I remember going there, and it was only 3 of my homies there, and we went to a school full of enemies. I mean, everywhere we looked, everywhere we went into a class, if we went into go take a test, an enemy was in there. And I just remember experiencing like so much fights. I remember being on the train tracks fighting. I remember going to the side of the restroom, not knowing if I was even gonna make it out, honestly. But, you know, God had his hand upon me. You know, he got me through my high school year. You know, I just remember just being through all that. And that picture right here, we took it on my homie's birthday, you know. And I remember that day very clear, man. So we went to school, we're hanging out, you know, a couple of enemies are passing by, you know, we're throwing up our gang signs, they're throwing up theirs, we're arguing. And I was telling my homie, you ain't with it just to go up to him and just stab him, just playing around. You know, luckily he didn't do it, but I remember right after school, my homie ended up getting jumped. You know, I already hopped in the car, I was already gone, I didn't know. You know, I remember him calling me like 2 hours after and telling me, you know, I just got jumped. And I was like, I remember just playing around with him. I was like, well, it's your birthday, bro. Like, what do you expect? And then, you know, just coming back, you know, we picked them up. We went looking for them. And I remember that was one of the vivid times where I did something where I live to regret, you know. It still haunts me to this times. And I remember just like really putting someone in pain. And at that time, my mind was, wow, I just really did this. I didn't kill him or nothing, you know, I just want to clarify that. You know, I just remember just doing it, and then I love the blood. I love the blood that went on my hands. You know, that was my whole just mindset, you know, just keep going, you know, strive to have respect, power, money, you know, but I didn't care about the money. It's just more about respect and power, having my name known, you know. And then I just remember going through so much at this time on his birthday, man. You know, I remember just hopping back into that car. We drove right here back into Uptown. And then, you know, we got into another fight. Man, it's just a lot of fights were happening back then. And then the fight actually happened, I think, down either this alley or the next alley. And this fight got crazy because I remember my homie, he was swinging. I remember looking at him. And then a big old board just came out of nowhere and just smacked him in the head. And I just came out of nowhere, and I grabbed the board and I smacked the other dude with it. And then I just remember like just picturing myself like, you know, hurt him, just hurt him. You know, because that was just my mindset. And then, you know, later on I ended up just going through high school. I got through it, you know, through all that violence, getting shot at, you know, just being in cars where people were shooting at us, you know, through all the drugs and all the parties where I got totally, like, completely gone, where I should have been dead because at half those parties, I took so much drugs that I didn't even know what drug I was even taking. And I just remember tripping on everybody. I remember pulling out a knife on all my own homies, and I tried to stab them, and my homies took my knife away. I remember just leaving and just didn't want to be there. Like for 2 days straight, I was just on a whole different level. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want no one to be around me. You know, my whole mindset was to kill somebody. You know, and then through it all, I remember one of my last nights with my homies, if they could show the picture. It was actually one of the last nights where I was actually hanging out with my homies. And I remember this day, like, totally transforming my life. I remember just kicking it there, just drinking, you know, smoking, and just talking about just, you know, what enemies that we're going to go hit next, what we're going to go do next, what was our next plans. But this whole time when I was, like, that whole time that was just playing in my mind, I was getting tired of it. I didn't want to do it no more. You know, I just stopped wanting to be around them. And I just, like, my whole mind just shifted. And I just remember just looking at them, and I didn't want to be part of it no more. You know, I remember someone talking to me about Revelations and telling me, you know, that you're going to go to hell. I remember that clearly, you know, through all that, like, I was going to go to hell. I was going to go to hell. The first time I was like, all right, I'm down with it. I don't care. But the second time it crossed my mind, I was like, dang, I'm really about to go to hell. And that was one of the last nights I truly stopped kicking it with them. You know, I just came out, and I was just like, nah, I'm not going to be around you guys no more. I remember going to a life group the next day, and, you know, they didn't do an altar call or nothing, but I remember just being there, and they were praying it out. I remember just saying a quick prayer to myself, like, dang, like, I could feel like a real, you know, I could feel like a family right here. And I could feel like a real presence of real love. And I just remember repenting right there, you know. And then from there, I just remember started coming to church more. You know, I was coming just Wednesday nights on gangs. Ryan always trying to reach out to me. You know, half the time I'll just, you know, hang up the phone, wouldn't want to come, but he kept pushing for me and pushing for me. And I just started coming. I remember coming Sundays. And then I just remember one time on Halloween night where this was my life truly took a turn. You know, I was already on the streets, and, you know, I just remember coming Halloween night, and then they ended up finding out that I wasn't living at my house no more. You know, I've been staying on the streets for a little bit. And then Ryan told me, you know, come into my D home. You know, come, you know, Adrian would take you to the D home right after. But I remember saying, like, dang, I'm really about to get saved right now, like, fully commit. I was like, you know, I got to go on one more ride. I got to go on one more before I do this. And then so me and my friends, we took off to Southgate. And, you know, without thinking, without hesitating, I remember my homie telling me, yo, my mom just got jacked by some 18-streeters. You know, they took her purse and they took off to this house. I remember saying, let's roll. You know, let's get up and let's go. We took off to their house. We didn't even knock or nothing. We just busted in, and I don't know how I made it alive out of that, honestly. And I just remember we're just right there arguing with them for like 10 minutes straight. You know, they pulled out guns. For that night, we just so happened not to have a gun or a knife or nothing. But they had it. They remember pulling it out on us and telling us, just get out of here. You guys don't want this. And I remember just looking at the end of the barrel and like, dang, like, you know what? I should have just went to that discipleship home. I remember telling God within my mind, like, God, if you get me out of this, I'll apologize to my mom. I'll go to church. I'll leave this life forever. Within 1 minute exactly, I remember one of the guys putting down the gun, and he said, just get out of here. You guys are just kids. Just leave. So at the time, you know, I didn't really think it was God. So I just kept arguing. But then one of my homies pulled me away. He said, just get in the car, let's roll. So on November 1st, I remember going to Ryan's discipleship home. And that's where God got a hold of me. God started really working with me, started really dealing with me. You know, I started coming to church more, you know, Sundays, Wednesdays. Whenever there was a church service, I was coming. And an event, I was coming. And I remember just talking about going to the UTC. Oh, man, I'm going to go to the UTC. I'm going to go. And then it started getting real to me. I was like, I'm not going to go. I don't want to go. You know, but it started getting closer. And I knew that God really had to do something with my life. You know, I knew if I stood in Whittier that I was never going to grow, you know, because I was too close to, you know, the streets where I grew up. So I remember going to the UTC, God really getting a hold of my life. And he touched my heart. I remember him changing me. He began to mold and shape me, began to change me to a whole new person. You know, he started dealing with my character, my integrity. You know, he started dealing with a lot of parts of my life. And that's pretty much my story. Amen.
Precious lives live because his precious life gives. And all for this kid, I really couldn't understand it. I was headed to the grave, and due to this sin, it was demanded. But one day, I met Mercy, and he introduced me to his grace. I felt a sudden rush of peace, a new crease upon my face. What's this joy that I'm feeling? I was rotting within. Now I'm breaking through this ceiling. Now I'm here. And now I hear the cry of the hurting. No more contemplation. God looked at me and said, my daughter, I've called you to this generation. No longer will you fight this call. No longer will you turn away. Wrap your mind around my word. You are the third wave.
How's everyone doing tonight? First off, we want to thank God for allowing us to be here. This is our story. So 10 years ago, my husband and I, Andrew, met, not knowing what was going to take place in our lives. I just remember we had mutual friends, and from there just started going to from dating to, drinking on the weekends. I remember we would drink on the weekends, and from the weekends it went to the weekdays. We would hang out with our friends. I remember just dating, and I remember just thinking that dating was all about having fun, hanging out with our friends. It went from dating to drinking more, and our relationship began to get more serious. I remember everything went by so fast. I remember we were dating, we were seeing each other so much that we began to just argue. We had no idea that the enemy had his plans, right, in the beginning of our relationship. A year later, I got pregnant, we got married, we moved in together, and I remember just hanging out with no one else but friends and drinking, and all the drinking that we had, there was nothing more but arguments. And it went from a cycle of arguments and being happy and arguments again and being happy again. And I remember thinking that that was normal. I remember thinking that drinking and fighting was okay because I've seen it with my parents. I've seen it with my family members. We've seen it with our friends. And this is one of the nights when we would go to the club, drink with our friends. We were having fun, but every single time we would drink and we would have fun, it would end the night with fighting. And we thought it was normal, and it was a regular cycle for us. We thought that, everyone goes through this. We had no idea that the enemy had a plan for us as well. I remember even having our child. He was only a toddler. I remember we would be drinking with our friends, or our son was running around. I remember we would argue so much that we didn't even care anymore who was around. We didn't care if our son was around, if he was listening to us argue. We didn't care that we disrespected each other in front of people, in front of our parents, in front of our family members. We lost respect for one another. We didn't care no longer if we were gonna stay together. We didn't care if we were gonna be married anymore. I couldn't be in the same room with him. He couldn't be in the same room with me. I remember just wanting to get divorced. I remember not even wanting to be with him, not wanting him in my future. I didn't care that I was hurting once when my parents got divorced. I didn't care that my son was gonna have to go through the same thing. I remember that one time when we hit the lowest of our lows, when we were so desperate. I was so desperate for God, because I remember, even though I didn't want to be with him anymore, I remember there was something in my heart just saying, if you didn't like what your parents did to you, if you didn't like that they divorced and how much it hurt you and how much it affected you, why would you do the same to your children? And it wasn't until the lowest of the lows that we began to get a hold of God, and we just questioned ourselves, let's just try this one thing. Let's just try God. What can he do for a marriage?
Crazy story, right? But it was our reality. Lost and bound, chained up by the devil. Losing our family to society, to the world. The devil having his way with our marriage. We had given up to each other. We gave into the lies of the devil. We were weeks away from filing divorce. But God never gave up on us. We didn't know so much about God, but God knew us. It's not until the day that we walked in through those doors of Whittier Outreach. And as we walked in, we were still hurting, we were still lost. We were still confused of our future. But as we kept going, as we kept giving our lives to God, he kept showing us how to be not only a better husband, a better wife, but a godly marriage. Our kids, firsthand, they seen the changing power of Jesus, changing power of God. You see, we thought we were hopeless. We thought we were just something impossible for God to change. So when we look at our struggles and all the things that were before us with our carnal eyes and seeing something impossible, so lost and hopeless our marriage was. But God had different plans for our life. You see, he stepped in and he did the impossible in us. He brought in hope into our hearts. You see, and now that we serve God together, now we have a joy to serve God, and we're never going back. See, it's our story, but God has given us a future. A future, a story that we thought was never going to get written. See, God did so much in our lives, and as a marriage, as a family, we have grown to appreciate that. Know that we deserve less than this. We don't deserve none of this, but yet God was faithful and provided everything in our lives. You see, we see other families come in, and I know that everything we went through, and to be honest, I wouldn't take it back, because I know that God had a purpose for it. See, we see hurting marriages. We see young marriages walk through these doors, and we know that we went through it. And we could give them the answer, and the answer is God. You You see, but we didn't know that and didn't know that. So I know that God has raised us, shaped us and molded us to understand that. You see, if you think that serving God is easy, it's not. But He did something impossible. He did something that we never thought it was even possible to happen in our lives. You know, as a family, now we serve God, and I know that everything we do now is to honor Him, to glorify Him. We're never going to be able to repay Him everything He has done for us. You see, this is what we thought was impossible. This is what we thought was hopeless. But God came and restored us. He healed us. See, we have our kids. And if you know us, you see our kids everywhere with us. You know, little soldiers, little gang warriors, little gang girl. And all that is possible because of God. And if they could come up, I know that they're here, and I want them to be part of this. They were excited to come up on stage. And if you guys don't know our kids, it's Andrew, Alex, and little Bella. But you see, this is our story, and this is us testifying of the changing power of God. And our kids are always talking about, I know little Alex, what do you want to be, Alex? He's shy. But he wants to be an evangelist. You know, Andrew's talking about being a pastor. But now that we see all this, we see why the devil was trying to take us out. Not only did we have a calling upon our lives, but our kids had a calling. Amen. So we leave you guys with that. We love you guys.